So here's some more information and examples of Weber's 6 characteristics of a bureaucracy. This shows up on both your group activity and your writing activity for this week, so hopefully this will help to clarify it. Basically, this is what Weber is saying a bureaucracy should be. Now, when we're talking about bureaucracy, let's make sure we're on the same page. It's not just the DMV or the government or your apartment manager. Let's use Weber's definition, which is that it's a formal organization, so not a primary, not a family. It's like a business or a large secondary group. It's designed to accomplish goals. I mean, if it's a business, that's probably to make money is a major goal, but there could be other goals too. And that it's trying to do this with a lot of people, and they're trying to be really efficient. And in order to do that, they need these 6 characteristics. So characteristic number 1 is specialization. And because of that, it means you only do one thing or just one narrow area of responsibilities. So in contrast, in sort of a traditional society, maybe everyone plows the fields and then everyone goes and helps harvest. In a modern bureaucracy, you just do one thing. So for this video, I'm going to walk through some examples of my long ago past job working with the BYU Cougaree as a college student. And everyone there just does one specific thing. So, my job, I worked technically at the snack bar in the bowling alley, but it was under Cougaree management if you've ever been there. Someone will be a cashier, someone will be a cook, someone will be in charge of making sure that napkins and things are taken care of. And then you only work at your specific restaurant. You don't go to every different thing in the food court. And that's true of everyone. There isn't just, one person who specializes and another, 10 people who float. Everyone has their own specific job. And the idea there is that it makes you really good at that one area and therefore more efficient because you don't have to learn to do a lot of different things. Step 2 is something called a hierarchy of authority. So in this case, each person is supervised by someone in a higher position until it gets to the very top. So with my job, there on the bottom, you have basically most of the student workers, cashiers, janitors, cooks. They would report to student restaurant managers, so each area of the food court had a student that was the manager there. Then there were some student general managers that were in charge of like 3 or 4 restaurants each. They then reported to the full-time food court managers, but it didn't stop there. Very few large bureaucracies will stop there. They reported to BYU Dining Services, who in turn would report to the offices of the Vice President and President, and they in turn report to the BYU Board of Trustees, which, similar to BYU Idaho's Board of Trustees, includes a lot of general authorities and officers of the church. And why, again, would you want this? It's to keep things structured. So it's not just chaos all the time, and that everyone is only in charge of a few people. So, if the Board of Trustees had to immediately supervise all of those janitors and cooks, that would not be particularly efficient. It gives everyone sort of a realm of influence that helps things run more smoothly. Part 3 is that there are explicit written rules. So there are rules for everything, and they're all formal. So it's not like that student manager can just make it up as you go. You have a handbook. So I remember on my first day of work, I got the official BYU Cougaree handbook, and that had things like our uniform policies, or just like late policies or getting a substitute. All of those things were written down. And then when I got to the restaurant, we had our own specific rules too. So I used to open the restaurant in the mornings, and we had, a 13-item checklist of exactly what had to happen and when. We had a whole basically recipe book of exactly what had to be done for each food item. And you can't just make up everything as they go. And usually you're doing that to standardize things and so that everything is clear, because you're dealing with so many people, and people would get frustrated really quickly if someone was told, oh, well, you can take 10 sick days, but another person got told you can only take 1. You need this kind of thing to be written down and easy to refer to. The next one is impersonality. And so that's you have to follow the rules. You can't just do whatever you want. So, I had to make each sandwich the specific way that it needed to be made. I couldn't think, ooh, I actually think this would be way more delicious following some other way. Nope, that would not be according to the rule. I had to wear, my black shirt and khaki pants. I couldn't decide that I was just going to wear jeans and my own clothing. There's not a lot of wiggle room, and again, it's to make employee interactions run more smoothly, so you're not constantly having to deal with a lot of different variations. And then number 5 is qualification-based employment. This is one where you may say, I don't think that always works that way, but remember, this is Weber's idea of an ideal bureaucracy, and that's that you get the job based on what you can do and not who you know. Like in a family, you're not necessarily the parent or the sibling or whatever because you're amazing at it. You're based on your family connections. He thinks in a bureaucracy, though, that it should be based on your skill, and that when you get promoted, it should also be based on experience and skill. So, I got my job at the Cougar for my past cashiering experiences. I'd worked with a cash register before, and then I was also comfortable cooking. So that particular job, because they didn't have more than like 1 or 2 employees there at a time, you had to be able to do both. And then the manager that I worked with, he got that promotion because he'd worked in the Cougar for several years, and he had a lot of experience with different parts of it. He didn't just get the job because, he was somebody's best friend, but it was because he'd worked there and knew what he was doing. Then his last one is separation of work and ownership. So you don't own the equipment you use. I used deep fryer bins and a cash register every day, but I didn't own those. Those weren't mine to take home. And then you also don't own the product you make. So the people who make the delicious BYU mint brownies, they don't own those once they make them. They still belong to the company. And then the other part of this is that the people who own the company are very rarely the ones doing the actual work. And so for Weber, all in all, you have these 6 things, and that is going to make you super efficient and super rational, and it'll help it to become this area that's all business. So you might wonder, like, well, why do I want a bureaucracy, or why are we bothering to study this? Just a few points. So first up, it's for efficiency. It helps you get from point A to point B both as quickly as possible and as reliably as possible. And especially when you're dealing with like large international kinds of things, it means you know what to expect. That, if you go to one McDonald's in Rexburg, it's going to be really similar to the McDonald's across the country or around the world. It means you can get things done quickly and more regularly. And when you're running a lot of people, that's really appealing. Now, I do want to point out your book does a great job talking about the shortcomings. So basically, any of these 6 steps can go wrong, often does go wrong, and they talk about a lot of them, from communication to obsession with rules. All of those are very real. And then you might be wondering, well, Sister Larson, why are we even studying bureaucracy? Why do we bother? Well, first is that it is a big social group that you come into a lot of contact with, but also this is an interesting thing to think about, is that Weber and many other sociologists think that our society itself is becoming more and more like a bureaucracy. So we call this rationalization. That term does show up, I think, on your group project. So they're saying that overall things that wouldn't have been bureaucracies in the past, even things like the family, are gradually getting that, where there's specialization, or there's written rules and regulations, or that they're becoming qualifications based, and they think that that's spreading from just the business world into every other part of society as well. So that's an interesting thing for you to think about. Yeah, just think about it with the groups that you deal with in your own life, with your friends or with your job. Where do you see bureaucracy? All right, I hope this helps. Thanks.